how exactly did we get from room-sized computers in the 1950s, those massive machines that only governments could afford, to a modern Brazilian tech landscape where artificial intelligence and instant payments are growing so fast that they have accidentally become a 46 billion raised playground for organized crime?
Yeah, it's an absolutely wild trajectory, honestly. I mean, we are looking at a system that scaled so incredibly fast, it basically outran its own guardrails.
Right. Well, welcome everyone. It is Friday, July 24, 2026, and we are your guides for today's deep dive into the source material.
Exactly. We're unpacking some really comprehensive research and data collection that was finalized this month, July 2026. Specifically, we're looking at Revision 3.
You are tuning into Macroeconomy AI, and today's broadcast is titled Tech Sector.
And the evolution mapped out here is, well, it's fundamental to understanding how modern economies even function today.
Totally. Before we go any further, though, a massive thank you to all of you for tuning in. Please make sure to like, comment, and, engage with the broadcast. We are really proud to be the channel, quote, bringing a compilation of analyses and news on macroeconomics, technology, and artificial intelligence.
Definitely.
And today's broadcast is brought to you by SecureNet Digital, providing next-generation cloud infrastructure for an evolving digital economy. SecureNet. Build faster, scale safer.
Okay, so to understand the sheer scale of Brazil's current digital infrastructure, we really have to trace the mechanical shifts in the global tech sector first.
Right, setting the stage.
Exactly. We need to look at how computing power transitioned from this scarce physical hardware to, the ubiquitous invisible utility we have now.
Because it started purely as hardware, right? Like in 1951, the Univac hits the market as the first commercial electronic computer. But I mean, commercial is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Oh, absolutely. They only sold, what, 46 or 48 units?
Yeah, around 46 to 48 units. It was this massive, bespoke piece of machinery. The real structural pivot, according to the research, happened in 1964.
IBM.
Exactly. IBM made this capital expenditure that fundamentally changed the trajectory of computing. They poured $2.5 billion into developing the System 360.
Which at the time was a bet the company move. I mean, it was more than double their annual revenue.
Wow.
But the mechanism behind that investment is what really matters here, because before the System 360, every computer required custom software.
So if you upgraded your machine,
You had to rewrite all your code from scratch.
that sounds like a nightmare.
It was. So IBM creates this standardized family of computers with a unified architecture. Suddenly, software became compatible across different models.
Oh, so they effectively invented the concept of the upgrade path.
Exactly, which built the modern mainframe industry. And from there, the physical footprint started shrinking while the capabilities just exploded.
Right, like the Intel 4004 single-chip microprocessor in 1971 paving the way for the PC. And then, by the 1980s, you have companies like Microsoft and Oracle capitalizing on the fact that software could finally be decoupled from the hardware.
Yeah, they realized you don't need to build the physical factory. You just need to write the operating instructions.
Which is such a massive shift. And that software-driven mindset fueled the commercialization of the internet. And inevitably, the dot-com bubble.
Right. And when that crash hit between 2000 and 2002, something like $5 trillion in market value just evaporated.
5 trillion. I always look at that dot-com crash and I see a direct mechanical parallel to what is happening right now.
How so?
Well, the crash wiped out thousands of these vanity websites and poorly conceived companies. But underneath that carnage, companies like Amazon and Google survived because they were building the foundational infrastructure.
Ah, I see where you're going. They weren't just consumer sites.
Right. They were building the servers, the search indices, the routing architecture. That eventually allowed Amazon Web Services to launch in 2006.
Shifting the entire tech world from capital expenditure, buying your own servers, to operational expenditure, where you just rent server space in the cloud.
Exactly. So right now, in 2026, we are deep into this generative AI boom. I mean, ChatGPT hit 100 million users in 2 months back in 2022.
A completely unprecedented pace.
Yeah. And today we have these massive foundational models eating up unbelievable amounts of compute. So my question is, are we seeing a modern-day infrastructure gamble, much like IBM in the 60s, where tech giants are pouring billions into AI data centers, hoping to be the ones renting out the factory space of the future?
The parallel holds up perfectly, actually. Foundational AI models require capital expenditures that completely dwarf that IBM gamble, even adjusted for inflation.
Wow, really?
Yeah, but the critical difference is the velocity of adoption. It took decades for mainframes to permeate the enterprise space. AI adoption is permeating the global economy in months.
That's terrifying and amazing.
It is. And this global collapse in the cost of computing, the cheap cloud storage, mobile ubiquity that served as the precise catalyst that made Brazil's current tech ecosystem economically viable.
Right, because that global plunge in computing costs hit at the exact moment Brazil was pushing to modernize its internal infrastructure.
Exactly.
And the national tech footprint in Brazil has just scaled to this enormous size. The data shows the broader information and communication technology macro sector hit 919.7 billion reais in 2025.
Which is staggering.
We are talking about 7.2% of the country's entire GDP driven by tech and communication.
And if you narrow that down to the core IT market, so hardware, software, and services, that specific slice reached 67.8 billion US dollars.
Yeah.
That secures Brazil as the 10th largest IT market globally.
10th globally, that's huge.
Yeah, the growth rate hit 18.5%, which easily outpaces the global average.
Yeah.
But, this didn't happen by accident.
Bro.
It's a direct result of aggressive regulatory and legislative mechanisms designed to pull capital inward. A major part of that is the Lei de Bem.
Oh, the tax incentive framework.
Right. It allows companies to deduct R&D expenses from their corporate income tax. So it heavily incentivizes them to keep their engineering and development teams inside Brazil rather than outsourcing.
And it's working. The report notes that in 2024 alone, that framework drove 51.59 billion reais in private R&D investments utilized by over 4,200 companies.
But software and capital mean nothing without physical connectivity. You need the backbone.
The 5G rollout.
Exactly. Brazil aggressively pushed its 5G. By August 2025, 5G covered approximately 64% of the population. They beat the regulatory target set by Anatel, Brazil's telecom agency, for 2027 by over 3 years.
Over 3 years early, that's incredible. Fast 5G connectivity out to the edges of the country fundamentally changes what you can build.
It really does. It enables complex edge computing for agribusiness, real-time transaction processing for urban fintechs.
But wait, it's not all perfect, right? This hypergrowth has created massive bottlenecks.
Oh, definitely.
The primary challenge isn't capital anymore, it's human bandwidth.
Yeah.
There is a severe talent deficit.
Yeah, the numbers on that are rough.
Between 2019 and 2024, Brazil experienced a 30.2% mismatch between the surging demand for tech professionals and the number of qualified people actually entering the field. Demand is just vastly outpacing the supply of trained developers.
And a 30% talent deficit creates a dangerous ripple effect across the whole sector.
Like what?
Well, development timelines stretch out. System architecture becomes less secure because teams are overworked. And the baseline cost of innovation just skyrockets as companies get into these fierce bidding wars for a limited pool of senior engineers.
Right, that makes sense.
Interestingly, the labor market itself is mutating to adapt. In 2025, 57% of the new tech professionals entering the market did so via informal or individual micro-entrepreneur setups.
So the gig economy structure has reached high-level enterprise architecture.
Essentially, yes. Developers are operating as independent contractors rather than traditional employees. It gives them the flexibility to jump between high-paying projects.
And honestly, the speed of the sector is clearly outgrowing the metrics used to track it. I noticed some discrepancies in the sources.
Oh, the startup counts.
Yes. Major market analyses cannot even agree on the basic baseline data. One source maps out 875 deep tech startups operating in Brazil, while another maps 905 too.
Right. It's wild.
We are talking about highly specialized, capital-intensive businesses, and there is an almost 10% margin of error in simply counting them.
That statistical noise is the classic hallmark of a hypergrowth market. Things are being built and dissolved faster than analysts can index them, and nowhere is that velocity more visible or more systemically impactful for the average citizen than in Brazil's fintech revolution.
Right. The mobile and 5G infrastructure boom provided the exact fertile ground needed for fintech to just explode. Depending on the specific market mapping, there are anywhere from roughly 800 to over 2,100 active fintechs currently operating in Brazil.
They have fundamentally democratized the country's financial architecture. And the crown jewel of that democratization is, without a doubt, Pix.
Pix is a behemoth.
It is arguably the defining financial technology of the decade for Latin America. Just to give you an idea, in December 2025, Pix processed a daily record of 313.3 million transactions.
Wow. Over 300 million instant zero-cost transfers in a single 24-hour period.
And it operates in tandem with open finance.
Open finance is such a fascinating mechanism. It basically means your financial data, so your credit history, income streams, payment behaviors, it's no longer trapped within the proprietary databases of a single legacy bank.
Right. If you provide consent, APIs allow that data to be ported securely to competing institutions. Today, there are over 100 million active user consents in Brazil.
Which creates a highly competitive marketplace. Like, if a legacy bank denies you credit, you can instantly port your verified financial history to a digital-first fintech that uses alternative algorithms to approve a loan.
Exactly. This interoperability lowers the cost of intermediation and forces traditional institutions to actually compete for retail customers. The result is a monumental achievement in financial inclusion.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering. 96.4% of Brazilian adults, which is 175.22 million people, now have an active relationship with the national financial system.
And central bank authorities, including current President Gabriel Galípolo and his predecessor Roberto Campos Neto, explicitly view PIX and open finance as critical mechanisms to formalize the economy.
Bringing millions of people who previously operated entirely in the shadow cash economy into the digital system.
It creates a comprehensive digital footprint for the population, which expands the tax base and provides macroeconomic visibility that the central bank just never had before.
So open finance and PIX essentially act as a new digital nervous system for the country's economy. Money and data move instantaneously. But, to follow that analogy, what happens when a central nervous system is hijacked? Because if you build a hyper-efficient, frictionless superhighway for capital, bad actors are going to figure out how to use it.
And that is exactly what happened. Because this fintech ecosystem scaled so rapidly, regulatory oversight struggled to keep up in real time. It opened a massive window for systemic exploitation.
Right, which brings us to the dark side of this boom.
Yeah.
In August 2025, federal authorities launched Operation Carbono Oculto, described as the largest operation against organized crime in the country's history.
Yes.
They uncovered that the PCC, this sprawling organized crime syndicate, had systematically used fintechs to launder over 46 billion reais between 2020 and 2024. They essentially built a parallel banking system right in plain sight.
It's terrifying. But understanding how this happened requires looking at the mechanics of early fintech regulation.
How did they manage it?
Well, to foster all that amazing competition we just talked about, the central bank initially established a precarious authorization model for payment institutions.
Precarious authorization.
Yeah. Before this, becoming a registered bank in Brazil required years of intense audits, massive capital reserves, and rigid compliance checks. The new payment institution license dramatically lowered the barriers to entry. It required very little capital and could be set up quickly.
So the goal was to let small startups compete. But organized crime syndicates realized they didn't need to smuggle cash in suitcases anymore.
Exactly. It was infinitely easier and cheaper to simply buy or create their own licensed payment institutions.
Unbelievable. So they used these front companies to plug directly into the PIX network, bypassing the strict anti-money laundering filters of the traditional banking sector.
Yep. They used synthetic identities and layered transactions to move 46 billion reais seamlessly through the national grid. Isaac Sidney, the president of FEBRABAN, the Brazilian Federation of Banks, he heavily criticized this dynamic.
What did he say?
He argued that the indiscriminate entry of institutions, operating without rigid prior authorization and constant supervision, provided the exact financial engineering tools that criminal syndicates needed to industrialize money laundering.
And the central bank's reaction was swift and heavy-handed, right?
Very.
In September 2025, they released a massive security package consisting of 8 separate resolutions designed to choke off these loopholes.
Right. They imposed strict transaction limits for non-authorized institutions, demanded rigid prior authorization before any fintech could begin operating, and drastically increased the minimum capital requirements. Some specific classes of payment institutions are now required to hold 15 million reais in capital just to maintain their license.
So the regulators essentially installed highly expensive toll booths and mandatory checkpoints on a highway that used to be a free-for-all.
Pretty much.
Which stops the getaway cars, but it also creates a massive financial burden for the honest commuters. If the central bank enforces massive capital requirements and immense compliance costs, do we risk pricing the small innovators entirely out of the market?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because it could inadvertently hand the monopoly back to the traditional megabanks, effectively killing the exact competitive environment that brought 175 million Brazilians into the system in the first place.
It is the defining tension of modern financial regulation. How do you regulate an explosion without extinguishing the fire?
Exactly.
Furthermore, the vulnerabilities extend beyond just money laundering. The broader cybersecurity landscape in Brazil is alarmingly fragile. Despite the massive growth in the tech sector, Brazilian corporate IT budgets dedicate only 6.4% to cybersecurity. That is roughly 35% below international baseline standards.
So the digital walls are incredibly thin.
Extremely thin.
Even sovereign state-backed projects are hitting the limits of secure architecture. Like the government's own digital currency project, the DREX, had to completely abandon its original blockchain infrastructure back in 2025 because developers simply could not solve the inherent privacy issues required to scale a national digital real.
Building secure, scalable, and private digital money is incredibly complex. It requires a level of cryptographic engineering that often conflicts with transparency requirements.
Which brings me to a very important point for everyone listening. While we are discussing billions of dollars moving through capital markets, regulatory shifts, and the explosive growth of these technology sectors, I want to explicitly remind you, absolutely none of this is investment advice.
Yes, very important.
We are analyzing the macroeconomic landscape and the mechanical realities of these systems, not telling you where to allocate your portfolio. Always do your own research and consult a professional.
A crucial reminder, especially because the landscape we are analyzing is currently undergoing another tectonic shift. While regulators are deploying these 8-resolution packages to fight the fires in today's financial systems, the next massive wave of disruption is already integrating into the broader economy.
Artificial intelligence.
Exactly. AI is moving from a novelty to core infrastructure.
And Brazil is treating this as a structural economic imperative. The Brazilian Artificial Intelligence Plan, known as PBIA, is targeting 23.03 billion raises in investments by 2028.
That's a serious commitment.
And the corporate sector is moving aggressively too. 40% of large enterprises in Brazil are already investing directly in AI agents.
The distinction between a standard large language model and an AI agent is critical here.
How so?
Well, an agent doesn't just passively answer questions in a chat window. It is designed to autonomously execute tasks across different software platforms. It can analyze incoming data, make a decision based on set parameters, and execute a financial transaction or trigger a supply chain order, all without human intervention.
The global macroeconomic stakes regarding these agents are immense, and honestly, the projections from major institutions are deeply polarized.
Okay.
Like, McKinsey predicts that generative AI could add trillions of dollars annually to the global economy. They view it as a massive engine for productivity, a way to automate drudgery and supercharge economic output across every sector.
However, the International Monetary Fund has presented a much starker analysis of the underlying mechanisms. The IMF warned that AI adoption could impact up to 60% of all jobs in advanced economies.
50%.
Yeah. While they acknowledge the potential for massive productivity gains for those who control or complement the technology, they explicitly caution that AI has a high probability of worsening overall wage inequality.
So we are looking at the ultimate duality of technological progress. What does this mean for you? On a macroeconomic scale, deploying AI agents creates immense, almost incomprehensible wealth and operational efficiency. But on an individual level, it possesses the power to radically disrupt livelihoods, displace knowledge workers, and completely rewrite the rules of upward mobility. Synthesizing the data we've covered today, the mechanical evolution is staggering. We transitioned from the rigid, centralized architecture of 1960s mainframes into the decentralized explosion of the software and cloud eras. That foundation allowed Brazil to build a vibrant, hyper-inclusive fintech ecosystem so rapidly that it accidentally provided enterprise-grade tools to international crime syndicates.
Wow, yeah.
And now we are integrating autonomous artificial intelligence into that exact same financial grid.
It really forces you to consider where the true leverage lies in the economy of the future. As AI agents become deeply embedded in our daily financial lives, autonomously analyzing our credit, executing our trades, and managing our open finance data, will the next iteration of the tech sector be defined by the brilliant developers pushing the boundaries of what these systems can do, or by the regulators desperately trying to install enough toll booths and guardrails to keep the entire digital nervous system from spiraling out of control? It is definitely a complex reality to mull over as we watch these systems evolve. And as we conclude today's analysis, I must state the following mandatory disclaimer. This content is strictly for informational and educational purposes, compiling public market data, projections, and analyses. The material expresses no ideological bias and does not constitute investment, financial, legal, or tax advice of any kind. Economic and technological projections are subject to frequent revisions, and past performance does not guarantee future returns. Strategic and financial decisions require personalized, in-depth analysis. Always consult qualified professionals before making decisions.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you a clearer understanding of the mechanisms driving this incredibly complex landscape. We invite you to join us for all our future broadcasts as we continue to track these massive shifts. That was today's Macroeconomy AI. We'll leave it here. You all stay well and keep an eye out for our new broadcasts. Subscribe to our channel, access links, and follow Macroeconomy AI on social media.